As you settle into your seat for this morning level 2 yoga class, let's again let ourselves float forward to back. Really liking this practice of finding balance. So we're going to work towards finding balance again today. And just let yourself sway and feel into where the energy gathers as you lean back and pause. Notice where there's a kind of gathering energy in your lower back, pelvic core area, and breathe into that area and feel the strength of it. And then lean forward. And it may be that your hips kind of stop that hinge, especially if you're in Virasana. And feel into your low back and notice if there are muscles. You can even probably bring your hands around to the low back and palpate muscles that are like, whoops, don't fall over. And they tighten up to hold you back. And kind of feel for how they ground into the pelvis. And then come upright. And let your spine lengthen out of an upright pelvis so that you have your natural lumbar curve, followed by a natural thoracic curve of the rib cage, and then the natural cervical curve of the neck. And play now with the head. Take just the head forward, leaving the spine where it is. Notice how the chin juts out a little bit and may try to lift to keep your eyes at the horizon, and how this shortens the back of the neck. And then draw your hyoid bone in and up, bringing the head back up over the spine. And take the head even back a little farther. May feel a little weird to lean it off the backside, and feel with your hands how the front neck flexors turn on. Now, in most of the research, people are talking about these front neck flexors as part of your core system. Bring your head back lightly over your spine, and these front neck flexors can relax, and the back of your neck can relax because your head is poised over the spine. And then remember, we always have a say in our relationship with gravity. So notice how you start today. Are you heavy and tired and your body is heavy towards earth, or are you light and airy inside? And just bring into your imagination the sky around you. And let your bones become light and hollow for a moment, like a bird's. And invite space between the vertebrae as the hot air balloon lifts you from center palate. And breathe into the discs between each vertebrae. And feel yourself create some space between them. As we age, we may lose height as things compress towards gravity. One of the beauties of yoga is we can decompress the spine, even in seated meditation, by bringing in imagery that helps us lengthen and lighten the spine. Root and stabilize the pelvis. And find a balance between this rooted earthiness and this length and space. Try not to strain too hard to lengthen, but breathe it gently long, relaxing the outer body over the lengthening spine on the exhales. Relaxing your forehead and your eyes and your jaw. And it can help to let your eyes rest back in their sockets, because when we pop our gaze forward, we tend to pop our head forward. So let your eyes really rest back in their sockets. And now come back to attention to the breath. And imagine that the breath is rippling outward from the channel of the spine in all directions, and it's expanding the torso. And on your next inhale, pause at the top of the inhale for a moment and feel how you're full of molecules of breath and how this can protect the spine. And then release the air and keep the spine long. And just take some of these easeful three-dimensional breaths. The inhales rippling out away from the spine. The exhales relaxing the circumference of the torso back in towards the spine. And then very gently sway the spine forward to back again. Really small sways. And feel up the length of the swaying spine. For where you might feel a little stiff and want to breathe more opening. You may nod the head a little, like you're nodding yes, and feel for a gentle lengthening of the base of the skull, the front of the neck, as you nod. And then pause, as balanced as possible between front and back, side to side. Relaxing your eyes, relaxing the jaw, relaxing the shoulders. Part of finding balance is finding this ease. Letting the eyes and the jaw relax. The arms and the hands relax. Putting your energy into gently lengthening the spine in a way where you can still breathe three-dimensionally into the torso. This three-dimensional breath helps us wake up all of our internal core. And on your next exhale, I'd like you to exhale through pursed lips and feel for your transverse abdominis, that corset muscle around your waistline, activating a little bit inward. And if you place your hands right on your hip pointers, out front, imagine a smile running down from the hip pointers, or a drawstring of sweatpants tightening a little bit, hip pointer to hip pointer, and drawing the pelvis in. As you exhale, the transverse abdominis activating this front abdominal core to support the spine. And then soften for your three-dimensional inhale. And then exhale through pursed lips and draw the drawstring hip pointer to hip pointer towards one another just a little bit. It's not overly active. You can think of it in a line of a smile. Lifting and holding the abdomen. Tightening a little bit in around the waistline, the low back. Don't let this breath work hunch you forward. Bring the heart or chin forward. Let the head and eyes still rest back. Shoulder blades still on the back ribs. We're not working at 100% of effort in the exhale. We're just trying to find that transverse abdominis turning on. And then soften for the inhale. And on your next exhale, gently lift your pelvic floor. And then soften for the inhale. Feel for the transverse abdominis gently hugging you in and the pelvic floor gently lifting up. Shoulder blades still on the back, collarbones still open, eyes still resting back in the head. Now feel into your very core around the spine, in the low back. And as you exhale through pursed lips, just feel for any gathering energy around the lumbar spine. This kind of tightening and stabilizing that turns on with your pursed lipped exhale. You may not feel anything in the beginning. You may not feel anything for months. Just look for it. Feel for it. Just kind of a gathering of energy in around the spine, a supportive hugging of those inner muscles, the multifidi, helping to stabilize the spine. Part of finding balance is waking up our consciousness to this inner core. And eventually we feel for all three: the transverse abdominis, the gentle lift of the pelvic floor, the gentle hug of the multifidi. The softening and expanding of the three-dimensional inhale. Now let go of your pursed lips, exhale. And see if through the nostrils, gently exhaling, you can still activate transverse abdominis, pelvic floor, and feel for the multifidi. Now feel for a gentle lengthening all the way up the spine into the skull on your exhales. Root the pelvis. Invite the spine to lengthen up from earth. Right into the skull. And again, gently sway the body forward to back. Feel for that balancing point. Spine right over pelvis, shoulder blades lovingly hugging the back, heart lifted. And then sway just the head, forward and back on the top of the neck. And see if you can find the place where the head comes towards balancing right over the spine, over the shoulder girdle, over the pelvis. Feel for it. And then let's inhale our hands to our hearts. May we continue to find balance throughout this practice today. Namaste. Okay, let's come to standing. And let's take our feet. Actually, let's bring them first, heels right under sit bones. And stand strongly on your right leg and lift to the big toe ball mound of your left foot. And stretch across to your pinky toe ball mound and then back to your inner and outer heel. Lift the left toes and look down at that foot and lift the arches. Now are your second metatarsals between left and right parallel? Unless you know otherwise, make them so, and put your weight on the four corners of the left foot. Lift to the right big toe ball mound. Press it in. Stretch across to the pinky toe ball mound, and then stretch back to inner and outer heel. Lift your right toes, lift the inner, outer, and transverse arch, and then release the toes. Now notice your knees. We want the knees, if we bend forward, to come out over the second and third metatarsals. So go ahead, bend your knees towards an Utkatasana, and then lift back up. And again, bend the knees out over the second and third metatarsals, and come back up. And one more time. And come back up. And now lengthen skyward. Let the hot air balloon lift you. Find the shoulder blades on the back and feel into the four corners of each foot grounding, the three arches of each foot lifting. Imagine that you're pulling energy stockings up your legs and hugging in now the banks of your river at your glutes, up your waistline to your shoulders. And internally, you're rooting from the pelvis and lengthening the spine skyward. Now, gently sway back onto the heels. Feel the balls almost lift off or maybe even lift. Root the inner and outer heel evenly and roll forward towards the big toe and pinky toe ball mound. And roll back towards the heels and roll forward. And notice if you try to hinge at the hip, try to keep the hips stable and just hinge right on the feet. And then come back to center and lean to the right and lean to the left. Feel yourself roll to the inner and outer edges. As you lean right, you're on the outer edge of the right foot, inner edge of the left. As you lean left, it reverses and come back to center. Now pausing in center, lift to one toe of one foot, doesn't matter which. The other foot, really root the four corners, lift the three arches. Now draw in the banks of your river, lift through the pelvic floor, lengthen the spine. Heart stays lifted and gazes up a little bit from horizontal towards the mountaintop. Let the head rest back and see if you can float the knee up. Now notice your weight shift around on the foot. Really ground into the four corners from the pelvis. Lengthen the spine out of the pelvis, broad across the shoulder girdle, and step down. So you can use the breadth across your shoulder girdle and across your pelvis as stabilizers. Okay, so let's come to the other foot, lift to the other toe, hug in the banks of your river, find that length of spine you worked on in practice, and take an inhale. Exhale through pursed lips and activate your internal core, lifting the foot. Think of that length all the way up the spine. Make sure your head's resting back over the spine. Feel the four corners of your standing foot. And step down. And now step a little wider. And keep the four corners of your feet planted. And now bend your knees and sway back and forth. And feel how you're lowering your center of gravity. That's going to help you find gravitational center and find it right in the middle. And feel into that, oh, I've created this great base for my body. Now from your hips, gently lean forward with a long spine. Can you keep lengthening out of that long spine, bent forward, and reach down for something and lift it up? And hinge. Your knees are bent. You're hinging from that pelvic core, keeping your long spine. You're not dropping the head forward, which will injure the low back. You're keeping that long spine. And then you come back up and straighten. And step your feet a little wider and turn the left foot out and take the right heel back. Now, if you're used to heel alignment, you can play with it a little. So today, I want you to have the left foot towards the back edge of your mat and take the right foot towards the front edge of your mat. And see, oh, does that create more balance for me? Open into your star pose, okay? So your left foot's towards the pinky toe side, the back edge of your mat. The right foot comes towards the front edge of your mat and open to your star. It'll be at a little bit more of a weird diagonal. And bend the left knee. You may feel a different stretch across your pelvis here, but see, oh, does it feel more stable here? Okay, the front knee opens out over your second metatarsals. It's not getting hugged in towards your big toe side. Feel into that. Stabilize the four corners. Lift your toes, lift your arches, or release the toes. Feel the four corners and straighten up. Turn your feet in and step together, and we'll try the other side. Step wide into your star pose. Pinky toe side of the right foot's now towards the back of the mat, and the left foot's towards the front. Open up and bend your knee. Out over the second metatarsals, you'll feel a diagonal stretch across your pelvis. But notice if for some people this is more stable, if it allows for easier opening in the front knee to keep your knee aligned with the second and third metatarsals. If so, then move towards this pose anytime we're in any of these poses. Okay? And straighten up, turn your feet in, and step back together. Mountain pose. Shoulder blades strong on the back. Let your head rest back. Find that length of spine and lift again to one toe. Find the four corners of your foot and turn the lifted knee out. Lift your arms into cactus position. Spread your fingers. Imagine that you're pushing forward on a wall and find your shoulder blades strong on the back ribs. Now use your arms as a kind of center balance point and see if you can lift the toe. Really be aware of the arms and stretch up from the arms even as you root your pelvis. Even if tree pose is easy for you, try to find the shoulder blade hip connection and let the pelvis and shoulders help you to balance. And bring the knee in and step down and roll your shoulders. Now lift to the other toe. Hug in the banks of your river. Find the length of spine. Take a deep inhale. Exhale through pursed lips. Find your transverse abdominis, your pelvic floor, and your multifidi. Bring your arms into cactus and turn the knee out. Keep that length of spine, and can you just lift the knee, lift the toe just slightly off the floor? Or maybe you don't even lift it totally off. Maybe you're still just barely putting some weight on the floor. But you're working on that length of spine and finding balance across the shoulders and across the pelvis. Bring the knee in and step down and roll the shoulders and step your feet wide. Now turn the left foot out again and take your right heel back and decide, do I have heel to heel alignment here? Does that feel good? Or do I want to step the left foot back and the right foot forward on the mat this way? And then bend into your Virabhadrasana 2. Now, part of finding balance in these poses is to not lean too far forward and put a lot of pressure on this back. The spine rises right out of the pelvis here. Turn your head and look out over the front fingers. Bring the right hand back to the back of the head and gently lift the base of the skull and rest the head back. Now feel into your pelvic floor and take it wide, rooting into both legs evenly. And release the right arm and rest the arms on water. Really feel into the back side, the right side of your pose. Feel into the outer heel, the pinky toe ball mound, the big toe ball mound, and the inner heel of your back foot. Lift your toes, lift your arches. Relax your toes and bring the left hand to the left femur, right arm alongside the ear, and broaden across your shoulder girdle. And if you'd like to, come lower. Continue to think of that length of spine and take a deep inhale. Exhale through pursed lips. Feel for the lifting pelvic floor, the active transverse abdominis, and perhaps even the multifidi. And continue just to explore this pose here, feeling the right side of the body as well as the left. Both feet evenly planted, both legs grounding you. And float back up, finding balance in your Vira 2. Before the right fingertips come back and the left palm lifts broad across your shoulder girdle. Fluid, three-dimensional breath even here. And I know I was backpacking this weekend because my front quads are feeling this right now. Fluid breath. And then exhale back up and straighten the front leg. turn it in, and turn the right foot out. Take your left heel back and find your balance point. With the left foot may come towards the front of the mat. Right foot might move towards your pinky toe and open. And bend your knee over the second and third metatarsal, keeping balance in the knee. Now notice if you tend to be doing this leaning forward, try to draw back with your back arm a little bit. Yes, beautiful. Find those back ribs drawing, those low ribs drawing back a little to find length in the spine. And as you root down evenly into both legs, really find that length straight up towards the sky. Hot air balloon lifting. Beautiful poses, everyone. Now just rest here. Where can you let go over efforting? How do you balance the right and left sides of the body? And really root the feet, but then relax into your roots. Bring the left hand behind the head. Rest the head back. Let the eyes rest back, as if you were standing in the back of the room looking out the eye socket windows. And then release the back arm. And bring the right hand to the femur, left arm alongside your ear, and stretch open the Parsvakonasana by rooting evenly into both legs. And perhaps you come lower. And we breathe into the back area, like you could breathe right into your kidneys. And we breathe into the front abdomen and into the heart. And we invite a balanced breath through the torso. And then one place we activate that internal core every time is when we move out of a pose. We exhale, maybe even through pursed lips, feel that lift of the pelvic floor, that turn on the transverse abdominis. Come back to your Viratu. Back fingertips light on the back leg, front palm lifts, balanced across your shoulder girdle. Long in the neck. Yes, beautiful poses, everyone. Feel for balancing the pose right to left, front to back. Four corners of the feet, helping you find that rootedness. And then exhale back up and pause in your Viratu. With that long spine lifting you straight out of the pelvis. Yes, use those low back ribs gently pulling you back so that you're not hinging here. You're lengthening straight out of your pelvis. Straighten the front leg and turn it in and step together, mountain pose. Shoulder blades strong on your back. Let your head rest back and the eyes rest back in your sockets. Roll back slightly to your heels and feel for the inner and outer heels. Roll forward towards your toes, big toe and pinky toe ball mounts. And come to that place where you feel centered, right up out of your ankles. Fluid breath. Put your weight on one leg and lift to the other toe. And let your wings rise and let them lower. And inhale up onto the front toe and exhale. Now you're floating skyward. Let yourself float. And I feel the challenge of balance here when I'm at Doug's house because the carpet is under me. It's not my hard floor at home. We inhale and exhale, and we have to be flexible to find balance in a different environment. Fluid breath, because the balance work we do here in our asana practice will translate into daily life. Fluid movement. We inhale and exhale. And see how easily you can move, and if you can find a balance between effort and ease, between contentment and tapas, santosha and tapas. Tapas, that burning desire to grow and transform. Inhale up and land the lifting foot, step the other toe forward, and exhale. And inhale, and fluid breath, letting your head rest back, the eyes rest back in your sockets. Four corners of the feet rooting. If you feel one that really wobbles off a lot, then your concentration goes to that corner and tries to help that corner root. And we step down. Okay, bring your chair or your block in behind your left foot for Trikonasana and step your feet wide. And turn the left foot out and take the right heel back. This class is a little bit more like a workshop. You may take your pinky toe back towards the back and your right foot towards the front, even if you just want to play today. If your balance is fine the other way, you just kind of want to feel it a new way. Open into your star pose with that spine straight out of your pelvis. And think of the work we did the last couple weeks where we really used the side body strength. And we're only going to come part way. We're not coming to your block yet. Take a deep three-dimensional inhale. Exhale through pursed lips, lift your pelvic floor, activate your transverse abdominis, the banks of your river, and begin to tilt. Can you keep your arms open in a T and root evenly into both legs, lengthening out of your pelvis? Keep this underside body long. So we're not rainbowing to get anywhere. We're keeping long in the spine, even in the neck. Shoulders release away from the neck. Or root through the feet and see if you can lengthen your spine an inch. And exhale back to standing. And release your arms and roll your shoulders. And invite the shoulders to relax as you open your wings again. Rooting the feet, lengthen the spine, and begin to hinge. Now, can you keep this left side body lengthening as you come down towards your shin, towards your chair, towards your block on your chair? Maybe you don't go as low as you can. I mean, I can come down to the floor, but I'm not doing it. I'm rooting from my pelvis down and really exploring that lengthening of the spine, that balance into both legs, that reach of my wingspan. Fluid breath, beautiful open poses. Woohoo! See if you're on a prop, if you can lift or lighten the weight on that prop and lengthen the spine. Be careful with that because if you're too low, it could strain the back. Be high enough that you can find that lift. And then exhale, float back up and turn the left leg in and the right leg out and find your position. I'm playing today with taking my pinky farther back of my right foot to the back of the mat and my left foot towards the front of the mat, across the short edge of the mat and open. Star pose. Now we have this tendency in yoga, we used to teach people to hitch the hip out back that way. See if instead you can root evenly into your hips and then begin to tilt the pelvis. Tilt the pelvis and lengthen the spine out of it, keeping the wingspan open. Create a starfish. Now, a lot of times we work by bunching our shoulders up to our ears. Release the shoulders. Find that length right out of those evenly rooting feet. See if you can grow the spine another inch. Yes, beautiful. And exhale back up. Release your wings and roll your shoulders. So sometimes finding balance in a pose is practicing it in a place where we can find more ease. So we open. Don't get too eager to come forward. Find that length first so you get that right side body long, and then tilt the spine. Yeah, beautiful. Keep that left side body long as well. And you can come a little lower and see, can you exhale through pursed lips and find that lifting pelvic floor? Find that active transverse abdominis. Perhaps find your prop. Notice the difference between putting a lot of weight on your prop and letting go. The core can just let go and you can just land on your shoulder girdle. And the whole lower body can be separate from the upper body, or you can activate that core through a pursed lipped exhale, lift the pelvic floor, turn on your transverse abdominis and the strength along your spine. And then exhale back up and turn the back foot in or the front foot in and step together and pause in your mountain pose. And let's roll the shoulders again. And then let's just balance here. Front to back, side to side, rooting into the four corners of each foot. Fluid breath. Find your cactus pose arms again. And lift to one toe and turn the knee out and find the banks of your river. All the way up into the armpits. Imagine there are little ocean buoys lifting your armpits so you're sideways lengthen. And then everyone just bring your foot to your calf for this pose. I mean, you can leave your toe on the ground and do just a kickstand, or just bring your foot to the calf. And really concentrate on letting the eyes rest back in your sockets. Maybe the base of the skull lifts a little from the base of the neck as the head rests back. And see, can you come back into your three-dimensional breath? Fluid breath. And then bring the knee forward and step down and roll your shoulders. Notice if you tend to bring yourself out of balance by throwing your knees back or throwing your pelvis forward or rolling your shoulders forward, try to find that balance in your body, rooting the four corners of your feet. If you tend to throw your knees back, drawing energy up the calves through the knees, down the shins. You tend to throw your pelvis forward, drawing energy back at the groins. Fluid breath, shoulder blades on the back with a lifting heart so the head can rest over the shoulder girdle. And lift to your next toe. Hug in the banks of your river, arms into your cactus, and open the knee. Now, can you hug in from the standing leg glute enough that you can really support the pelvis as you lift the foot? Can you still find that length of spine, both side bodies, that you found in Trikonasana? Fluid breath. Let each pose inform the other towards balance. Can you relax here? And come into your three-dimensional breath. And release the knee forward and step down and roll the shoulders. Okay, let's come to our wall and find a little spinal length down into our Virabhadrasana 3. Let's lift the fingers up the wall. I'll do it on this side because the light is funny there. Up the wall, up, lifting the heels as high as you can off the floor. Fingers and hands are wider than the shoulders. And then we slowly lower the heels and lengthen the lumbar spine. So we're all about finding a spaciousness to the spine to balance the body. Breathing three-dimensionally as we lower the heels, blowing up the little tires between the vertebrae with the breath, feeling the discs. Then we keep that length as we step back towards our half dog. And we may come to fingertips on the hands. But then we notice if the shoulders are bunched up around the neck, we may lift the head a little higher than the arms. So the neck can be long out of the shoulder girdle. And root one foot and float the other foot up behind you. Now even here, hug in the banks of your river. Take a deep three-dimensional inhale. Exhale through your pursed lips and lift pelvic floor. Activate transverse abdominis and see if you can draw the drawstring between your two hip pointers together slightly. And then you see, can I balance over the four corners of my standing foot and take my fingertips off the wall? Maybe I just lighten and I integrate my limbs into my torso. And I lengthen the spine and stay with my three-dimensional breath. And then release fingers back to the wall and step in for a standing cobra. Fingertips shoulder height. Humerus bones parallel to the body. Root into the four corners of your feet and keep your knees and pelvis aligned well as you lift the heart. Shoulder blades can lift the heart. Long neck into the base of the skull. Balance your weight foot to foot. Balance your weight on the four corners. And root from the lower body to lengthen the upper body. Beautiful, Sarah. Beautiful, Debbie. Yeah, I don't see any of the hips I can see well being forced forward. Beautiful, Jory. Yeah, good, John. Nice length to your neck, Sarah. Debbie, Ellen, yes. Good. Fluid breath. Nice breath across your shoulders, Anne. Good length through the whole spine, Jill. And release. Okay, let's reach up the wall again. I'm going to watch this time. Reach up the wall. Make sure your hands are wider than your shoulders, because the only one I can really see that on here is Ellen and Susie. Now lift up and exhale. Lower your heels slowly and really try to find the length in your waistline, in your thoracic spine of your rib cage. And then it's pretty natural to have the shoulders come up, then broaden them and lengthen the neck. And then begin to walk back. Keep that length you just found. Yeah, keep it, keep it, keep it. Beautiful. Now coming to fingertips, if you like, find a good place for your head and neck in the line with your spine. Look down at your feet. You want them sit bone distance wide. Yes, a little wider for a few of you. Yep. And you want to make sure you're on the four corners of the foot you're going to stand on. And then slowly lift the other leg. Yeah, beautiful, John. Really nice length to your spine all the way through the head. Fluid breath. Now the toes try to point towards the floor, and you lift with the inner thigh of the lifting leg, and then integrate your limbs back into the torso and shine out from that pelvic center. And maybe you do a pursed lips exhale to turn on that inner core and feel for it, to feel for that sling of strength along the front of the spine. And maybe you come off your fingers and you balance a little bit here. Beautiful, Jory. Fluid breath. And then we release and step forward and come into a balanced cobra up the wall. Some of you, yeah, could step in a little farther so you can let the tailbone go towards the floor, not flattening the spine. And then really find that length. So let the heart rest back over the pelvis. Some of you now, because I've focused on the pelvis, are making sure your pelvis doesn't come forward, but your heart is forward. So yeah, find the heart over the pelvis, over the ankles. There you go. Tailbone rooting, lift the base of the skull, lift the heart. Nice length up the sides of the spine. Balance the pose side to side and breathe three-dimensionally into it. These are beautiful. Yeah, really nice length at the side bodies, I can tell. And now you can isometrically pull down the wall without your hands moving and have that help you lengthen the sides even more. Those of you who flare your ribs, don't let them flare. Tailbone towards the earth and release. Come back to your mat. And let's bring in 2 blocks. Now, if you don't have 4 blocks between you, Susie and John, then you could take turns. But you're going to put your 2 blocks on your mat so that the arch of your foot's going to fit between the blocks, and step 1 foot up so that your heel corners are on one block and your big toe and pinky are on the other. And hopefully the blocks are wide enough for everyone's feet. So you step up onto the blocks like this, and one block is under your big toe ball mound, pinky toe ball mound. The other block is under your inner and outer heel. Yeah, and I don't know, Jonathan and Jory, if you have 2 blocks that are even either. So you can, oh, you do. Okay, good. All right, so here, then, be careful. Look around that you're not going to trip on other props or fall into furniture if you come off your blocks. Here, I want you to really feel your big toe ball mound and your inner heel, your pinky toe ball mound and your outer heel. And let your knees soften a little and your pelvis rest back over the arches of your feet. Ah. Now feel into the arches of your feet that are in space. Feel into the grounding four corners of your feet, the breadth of your pelvis over your feet, the breadth of your shoulder girdle over your feet. Let your head rest back over your shoulder girdle and breathe up the length of your spine. And exhale through pursed lips, lift your pelvic floor. Activate that smile line of the transverse abdominis. Feel for the multifidi. Now, this should not change the shape of your lumbar back. If you're tucking your tail to try to find the core, resist that. Keep your pelvis in neutral. You're not flattening the spine. As you exhale, lift the pelvic floor. Activate the transverse abdominis. Lengthen the spine straight up towards the center palate. Balance your weight between the four corners of each foot. And step back down off your blocks. And pause for a minute in standing. And still feel, it's kind of cool because I feel like I'm more aware of, woo, my front corners and my back corners with a space in between them. A fluid breath. Okay. Now, bring in your chair or use your wall for Parsvottanasana. So we'll come towards half dog again, but one leg will stay forward and one leg will come back and your spine will lengthen back. You want to be even into your hips here, and I want you to feel for the four corners of each foot. Make sure that your feet are at least at bone distance wide, because I saw that in some of you in Vera 3, you didn't start that way. So yeah, stepping back, beautiful length, John. Base of the skull reaches away from the shoulder girdle, so the back of the neck stays really long. Some of you may want to play with lifting your head a little higher and just see, can you find length through the neck? And then rest it back and draw back from your hip creases and breathe three-dimensionally into the lengthening spine. Now feel into both your hamstrings and make sure that you're not over lengthening. You'll know that if you feel too much stretch right up by your sit bones. Okay, so you can bend the front knee if you feel too much stretch up by the sit bone. Beautiful, spacious spines. Now, if you're on the wall or even on the chair, you could lift the spine a little bit and ask yourself, where would I need to lift to be able to hold my spine long and strong without this prop? Yeah, beautiful, Susie. Fluid breath. Find that length up the spine. You're working on balance. You may need to lift up under the navel to find length along the spine. And then place your hands back on your props and slowly step in and switch sides. Beautiful. Now here, you could also walk your hands up the wall if you were doing this on your own. Come up onto your balls of your feet and lower your heels. Find that nice length to your spine before you walk back, keeping one leg forward, but with the intention of really lengthening that spine. Your feet are at least at bone distance wide. And when you get comfortable with your shoulder girdle and the length of your spine, then take a deep three-dimensional inhale. Exhale through pursed lips and feel for that lifting pelvic floor, that active transverse abdominis, those multifidi. Feel for the banks of your river and root into the four corners of each foot. See if you can really solidify your balance here. Perhaps lift the spine a little higher and lift your fingertips off the prop and build your strength. Fluid breath. Make sure you're high enough and keep the length in the neck even as you do the release. Yeah, beautiful. Don't lift off if it doesn't feel good. Broad across the shoulder girdle, strong along the front core. And release. Step into your wall or your chair and either press down on the chair or press down on the wall and come into one more standing cobra, rooting the tailbone, lifting the heart. Find length up the back side of the body as well as the front. The hands can be at shoulder height. They don't have to be up by your head. Yep. And then really try to find that lengthening spine. Long in the back. Okay, now right here, I'd like you either to use a yoga strap or a TheraBand and bring your foot into the strap, or if you have the flexibility, into your hand. So what I want is to not have people trying to get so high that they hitch their knee out here. You want your knees, these balanced in line with each other. So you don't need the band if you can bring your foot into your hand and lengthen the knee down. But if you do need it, use it. Okay. You'll have more balance in your body. Now I want you to feel across your pelvis and really root into the four corners of your standing foot. Lift your toes, lift your arches. Remember the space under your arches when your feet were on the block, and really root the four corners. Make sure you're not hyperextending the knee or throwing your pelvis forward or back. Root the tailbone down, and just in runner's stretch, see if you can lift the heart broad across the shoulder girdle, and maybe let the eyes rest back in the socket and the head rest back slightly. So you come into an upper thoracic slight back bend. Yeah. And you reach the knee for the floor and you rest your eyes back into their sockets. Beautiful. And release. And let's try the other side. Okay. So you want to find that tall Tadasana first, right? And that strength in your standing leg side before you bring the other foot up. And then you could draw, like you did in Cobra, isometrically down with the hand on the wall, broad across the shoulder girdle. You lift the heart center as you reach the knee earthward and stretch your quads and open the heart and lengthen the side waists and lengthen the neck. Let the eyes rest back in their sockets and the head rest slightly back, and lengthen up into the buoys under your armpits. Now feel for balance. You can throw your balance off here by over efforting. Soften, maybe come out of the stretch a little bit, breathe into it, and then stretch it open a little more again. And then a release. Pause on both feet and roll your shoulders. And relax your shoulders into mountain pose. Really grounded into the spacious four corners of your feet. Feel up the legs for balance at the knee, femur right over tibia. Feel up the femur bones to balance the pelvis. Feel up the spine for a lifted heart and shoulder blades strong and wide on the back. And let the head rest over the shoulder girdle. Three-dimensional breath. Hug in the banks of your river up the side bodies, especially at the glutes. And root down into the outer heel and the pinky toe ball mount. Lift up the inner arch, up through the pelvic floor, right along the side spine, all the way into the neck. Make sure you're not hyperextending the knees or throwing the pelvis in effort. Balance those focal points, pelvis and heart and palate. Okay. And then we're going to come into Natarajasana. You can do that in the center of the room. You could face the wall again and step a little bit away so you can hinge forward, coming through your runner stretch, or you can use a chair at the center of the room. You could be sideways on the wall like this and come forward and just let your hand. I actually have this handy little part of the wall that sticks out that I can bring my hands to, so use your furniture, okay? So bring one foot into your hand like you had for the runner stretch, okay? And relax into the runner stretch. Let the knee relax earthward. Find the four corners of your standing foot, the banks of your river, the lifting pelvic floor, the long spine. So where it's hard to lengthen it often is in the low back, because that's what gives if our front hip flexors are tight down into the quads. So really try to find that length pelvis to femur so that you can really find that length in the lumbar spine. And then begin to press the foot back into the hand, lifting it and hinge forward, keeping the heart lifted, the fingertips lifted, broad across your shoulder girdle. Fluid breath. Your hand could be on the wall. Long, spacious spine, balancing on the four corners of your standing foot. Fluid breath, beautiful. Can you stay broad across the shoulder girdle, relaxed in the jaw, and release. Follow yourself up. Beautiful, Debbie. And let's try the other side. So really think of everything we've done to create balance in the body. Find that long spine. Yeah, I like it that some of you are really taking your time in the runner stretch before you begin to hinge into Natarajasana. And remember, you can do any of the previous work we've done. And if for some of you it's hard to bring your hand into your foot into your hand, you could also have a chair seat behind you that you rest your foot on. I'll show it with a yoga ball. Okay, so I see a few of you aren't wanting to put your foot in the strap, so you can be here, right? And you could then just be supported and use your upper body to find the lift. And it could even be lower, it could be on a footstool. So, yeah. Those of you who are in your pose, really find that length up the side bodies, up through the neck. Yeah, good. Broad across the shoulder girdle. Active and alive in the lifted foot so that you don't sickle it. Yes, beautiful. Nice length, Jill. And release. Pause again in your mountain pose. Breathe deep into the body. Fluid breath. Can you balance in your mountain pose? Balance so well that you just feel light. If you feel a part of yourself efforting, ask yourself, how can I realign the spine, the head, the heart, the pelvis to create more ease in mountain pose? Can you imagine the blocks beneath your feet in the space of your arches? Okay, let's do one more standing balance pose here, and then we'll take it to the floor and find some balance in another way. Okay, so let's bring the block to the left side of our left foot for Garuda Asana Eagle Pose, which we've been doing quite a bit lately. And let your wings open and let your front knee bend and your both knees bend and come up to the toe of the front foot. Come back to your flying eagle here. Feel into the four corners of your standing foot. Try to keep the arches alive. Come into that three-dimensional breath and let it expand you and lift you like it creates a helium balloon effect. And when you're ready, inhale, lift that foot up and over to the block, bend your knees and find either a hug into each other away or a pressure into each other, whichever helps you find balance. And pat your buttocks. Hug in the banks of the river there. That's going to help. And then float the arms up and bring the left hand over the right. You can come back of hand to the heart like we did last week, or you can cross at the elbow and come into the full pose. Fluid breath, playing with lifting your toe off the block. Feel for the four corners. And exhale slowly. Elbows in towards the torso. Four corners grounding. And release your wings and inhale, fly up and land, mountain pose. Relax into your three-dimensional breath. Heart focal point floating over pelvis, palate floating over heart. Take another deep three-dimensional inhale. Exhale through pursed lips and feel for your transverse abdominis, pelvic floor multiply. On your next pursed lipped exhale, lengthen the spine as you hug in the banks of your river. And then switch sides with your block and begin your crane. Fluid breath. Four corners of the foot grounding. Can you rest your head back here and your eyes back in their sockets and float above your standing leg? So it's not as much work for that standing leg. Those of you who are local, I am teaching in person at Mountain Stream Thursday, 6 to 7:30 p.m. I know that's late for some of you, but if you'd like to come, you're welcome. Step the foot over onto your block, bend your knees, hug the legs in towards each other, and bring your right arm over your left into whatever position's right for you. Fluid breath. Feel the banks of your river, the gentle lift of the pelvic floor, the transverse abdominis, and see, can you float the foot off? Stay with your three-dimensional breath. Get to know the four corners of this foot. And if you'd like, exhale your elbows in towards your torso. Release your wings and inhale, lift. And exhale, release. And pause with your breath. Fluid breath. Really finding balance in your mountain pose now. Okay, let's come to the floor and let's come first onto hands and knees. And let's work our balance a little here, which also really involves our core. So come onto your hands and knees. I'll bring the computer a little closer so you can see me a little better. Okay. And let's go ahead and just inhale a cow and exhale a cat. And notice if one side, front or back of your side is tighter when you stretch into your cow and into your cat, following your breath. And if one side's tighter, for me, the cat is definitely tighter, then pause there for a few breaths and breathe. Play with releasing your neck out of the shoulder girdle in both poses. How do you do that in cow? You may have to come out of the cow a little bit. Broad across the shoulder girdle to lengthen the neck. Doesn't mean you can't reach the chin forward sometimes, even jut it forward to find length along the front neck. But we just don't want to stay there if it's shortening the back of the neck too much, because that's the posture we usually practice in daily life. Now, come into your hissing cat and press evenly into hands and legs. If it's hard to be on your knees, remember you could have your hands on a chair seat and be standing and doing the same work. Come back to your neutral spine. And take your right fingertips forward and your left toes back. And float the arm and leg up, keeping length in the back of the neck. And feel broad across your shoulder girdle, broad across the pelvis. And if you'd like to, exhale, elbow towards knee, and inhale, lengthen out. And exhale, and inhale. Exhale, and inhale, and pause, and lower fingertips and toes, and just touch the earth, and lift back off, and lower, and lift, and lower, and lift. And one more time. And then you can pause here if you want to go one step farther. Open the arm into cactus and the knee into doggy at the fire hydrant, and then stretch the limbs back out. And bend and straighten, and bend and straighten, and then lower hand and shin to the floor. And it's okay to stop with any of the previous exercises. Okay, so stop where it's best for you. Bring left hand forward, right foot back, and inhale and exhale. Let's pause in the balance. And then as you're ready, you'll exhale, elbow towards knee, and inhale, lengthen, and exhale, and inhale, exhale, and inhale. Make sure you feel well grounded on the hand that's supporting you, that the fingers are spread, that the shoulder is above the wrist, and lengthen out and lower toes and fingers and just touch the earth and float back up. Remember, we're not coming into a back bend here. We're keeping long and strong in the spine so that we strengthen our multifidi. And then we lift. And if you'd like to go further, come into cactus arm, doggy at the fire hydrant, and straighten, and bend, and straighten. Feel how you're balancing on these two limbs, staying strong across pelvis and shoulder girdle. And lengthen back out and release. And inhale your cow. And exhale your cat. And take a few more fluid breaths, moving through your cow and your cat. And notice if even that core balance work we just did has helped you open your spine a little bit. And then hands at least as wide as your shoulder girdle, roll your toes under and lift to your downward dog. Knees bend in. Really put balanced energy into each finger pad, into your metacarpal arch. Lift the center of the palm. Lift the arch at the wrist up towards the armpit. Lengthen back to your sit bones and then take the femur bones back. And feel into balanced energy side to side in your downward dog with the neck long. And if you'd like to, float one leg up behind you. Keep your pelvis balanced, your weight into your arms. And we begin to work towards arm balances. We strengthen the upper body and lower the foot. Now you could just stay on 2 feet or lift the other leg. You can come down at any time to child's pose and rest or come back into cats and cows. Keep active in each finger pad, balanced across the hand, a lifted center palm, a lifted arch of the wrist. And lower the foot down and walk your dog. So if it's possible, we begin building strength in the upper body by holding our dog pose a little longer. So those of you who are working on arm balances now, we want to spend some time in downward dog. This will help us build bone density in the arms. It helps us create inversion for the head and the pineal and pituitary glands. Healthy also for the thyroid and parathyroid glands to have the head below the heart. Now let's all come down to our knees wide, big toes together, and roll back child's pose. Child's pose is uncomfortable, then come into cat and cow. You can do all of this with your hands on a chair. You'd be walking back towards half dog. Fluid breath. Resting the wrists, perhaps lift the hands off and roll at the wrists. And then rest your forearms on the floor. Bring your palms together. Evenly press each finger pad into the other. And either you can roll up into downward dog again or roll up here into your dolphin. Walk your feet in a little towards your head. Walk your feet wide. Bend the knees and press the forearms into the mat. Take your sit bones back, lengthening just like you did in downward dog. The feet can be as wide as you like them to be, and you can walk forward so your shoulders are over your elbows and your head dangles down, pressing gently towards the floor, long neck, five-pointed star, fluid breath. You can stop anywhere along the way. You could be working on your downward dog. You could be working on your dolphin. You could be in your five-pointed star, or you could come into your headstand. Fluid breath. And then walk your feet back in if you're ready and lower down and rest in your downward dog. Or sorry, rest in your child's pose. Fluid breath. So we do a little inversion work to balance the practice. And now let's stretch out the back of the spine by placing our hands beside our head and gently rolling towards the top of the head. Now, if it feels like you can't get comfortable in the head and neck here, then just have the head a little off the floor and roll. Or you could put a light blanket under so you could be rolling a little higher. But we roll from hairline towards fontanelle without much pressure on the neck. You can stay with this. Healthy again, inverting head below heart. Pineal and pituitary gland having a little pressure from the fontanelle. Or if you'd like to go farther, draw the hairline in towards the knees, bring the hands around towards the feet, and roll up into rabbit pose. Those of you who want to do inversions in this practice, you could still be working on your headstand here, while others roll from child's pose into rabbit. Fluid breath. Hug in the banks of your river. Lifting the pelvic floor can help you lift the pelvis. And then roll the hips back down. Lift the head slightly and just rest. Fluid breath. Walk your hands forward. And remember, you can also work on planks against the wall. You could work on planks with your hands on a piece of furniture, or you can do it on the floor. Rooting your hands down. Lift into your high plank. And if you'd like to, float one foot off the floor. Again, working on balance across your shoulder girdle. Bone density development in the upper body. And then lower the other foot and lift the other side. Stay broad across shoulder girdle, broad across pelvis, long in the neck. Feel for a balanced length to the spine. And lower the lifted foot. Lower to your knees, lift your feet, lift your heart, lift your chin. So now I give you permission to shorten the back of your neck and jut your chin forward and stretch the front neck. And then roll back and lift up into your plank again. Now, if wrists are getting tender, you could be on forearms in a low plank. Lift one foot, balanced across your shoulder girdle and pelvis. Float that foot down, lift the other foot. Long spine from tailbone into the skull. Lower the foot, lower the knees, lift the feet, lift the chin, and take the lower jaw forward of the upper jaw, stretching the throat. Roll back onto hands and knees and roll over onto your back. And bring in a pillow if you'd like one, any blankets you might need. Have your blocks handy. And we won't start with our head on the pillow. You may also want your bolster for Shavasana. So no pillow yet. Lift your pelvis up onto your blocks and place the blocks at first on low. So I bring a block in under me from each side to create a nice platform. You could also just use one block right under your sacrum. Now press into your head a little, lengthen from pelvis to shoulders, and then lift the head and lengthen the neck, keeping your neutral curve. When you're in a supported bridge, your gaze should be perpendicular to the floor. And take a few three-dimensional breaths here. On your next exhale, blow out through pursed lips and feel for your hip pointers coming closer together as that drawstring gently tightens. And then soften and inhale. Inhale wide into your waistline. And then exhale through pursed lips and feel for the hip pointers coming closer together. We're waking up our internal core. We will best find balance in the body if this internal core turns on for us when it's needed. Relax into the three-dimensional inhales. And the pursed-lipped exhale doesn't have to be as strong as possible, but on it you gently feel lift in of the pelvic floor. And then you soften, relax, and fill on the inhale. We're training the body to be aware of these muscles so the body will use them when needed. So you can stay here on low blocks or lift the pelvis and turn the blocks together up to medium under your sacrum. Still a nice wide platform. Let your arms now release, palms up on the floor, broad across the shoulder girdle. Three-dimensional breath. Let go of the pursed-lipped exhale now and just relax, open on the exhales. And feel for a stretch of the psoas from the vertebrae through the pelvis to the inner thigh. It may be subtle, but you may feel a little tightness in the low back. This can be from the psoas pulling the vertebrae forward so you can lengthen out towards the back ribs. If it doesn't feel comfortable, you've come to the medium blocks, then come back down to the low blocks or come back down to a folded blanket. Fluid breath. Try to become aware of the large muscles, the psoas, that run from each side of your vertebrae of the low back through the pelvis to the inner thigh. Invite that deep muscle to relax now, because relaxing is part of balancing the body. Now remember, you can stay with any step along the way, or you could lift up again onto your high blocks. Fluid, three-dimensional breath. And wherever you are, you can float one leg up and then the other, coming in to your movement towards shoulder stand. Legs up the wall pose, legs up the sky pose. Remember, your knees can be slightly bent so that your legs can really relax. So don't over effort to straighten the legs skyward. Try to stay with that three-dimensional balanced breath. Explore where the breath can expand you. Concentrate on the breath expanding the body three-dimensionally. The concentration can become a meditation on where breath and body meet and merge. How little energy can you expend keeping the legs balanced above the pelvis? We come into inversions to rebalance the body. If you're comfortable here and you want to stay here for your Shavasana, you may. If you'd prefer to step down, then slowly do so. Slowly removing your blocks. And if you'd like to, take a few somatic walking movements with your pelvis, releasing the lumbar spine. And then I invite you into a simple Shavasana, but if you have another restorative in mind, feel free to come into that. You may want to place the bolster beneath your knees, the pillow beneath your head. And let yourself really rest, remembering Shavasana is a part of a balanced practice. See now if you can rest really present in this moment, this breath, these sensations. BKS Iyengar says, balance is the state of the present, the here and now. If you balance in the present, you are living in eternity. Gently bring energy back into your fingers and your toes. Feel into what a balanced breath means to you. And invite yourself to stretch in whatever way your body calls for. Remembering that our body always works towards homeostasis, towards balance and comfort. Slowly bring yourselves back to a comfortable seat. Let's breathe together for a moment. And let's inhale our hands to our hearts. May the balance we find in our practice filter in to the rest of our lives. Namaste. And thank you for being in class today.